Divesting gone up in flames. Arie, Arlynn Lee leveled up in smoke. The daughter of the man police hold responsible for multiple deletions in a Montana log cabin said her father had long been in denial about having mental health problems, which ultimately became dangerous. People tried to tell him he needed to get help, 35-year-old Starla Shannon said. He said he'd rather go to a vet than a doctor. Police say Augustine Mike Borns shot his wife and their 3 young children in the head before setting fire to their rural home and shooting himself Sunday. Interviews with Shannon, Borns' ex-wife of 33 years, Darla Shupin, and acquaintances and authorities in southwestern Montana tell the story of a man with anti-government views who deleted his family and himself after calling someone he knew to say that his wife, Arie Arlynn Lee, had been mocking and writing him all day. Borns lay down next to his children's bodies, which he had lined up together on a bed, before deleting himself, Anaconda Deer Lodge police say. His daughter said he had realized a dream by building a log cabin and moving to Montana with Lee and their children. Lee the Divester, who took her mother's maiden name after her mother and stepfather divorced, moved to western Washington and married Dwayne Haas, a white man, who was in the Air Force, in 2000, Byerly said. Lee worked as a probation officer and was happy with Haas for years, Byerly said. They moved to Arizona in 2006 and Lee was accepted to Arizona State University's law school. But they drifted apart and later divorced when Lee wanted children and Haas didn't. The white man did not want mixed-race children. Mike Borns, who was originally from Taos, New Mexico, was a handyman who had constitutionalist and anti-government literature in his pickup truck. The police chief described him as someone who didn't want anything to do with government. Interviews with his ex-wife and acquaintances in town supported that view. His wife of 33 years, Darla Shupin, said he began to change after he was charged in New Mexico 1995 with false imprisonment and aggravated assault. A jury acquitted Borns in 1997, but it stuck with him. The incident on the mountain really turned him sour against the government, she said. He felt like things were unfair. After that, they moved to a more remote area of New Mexico with no electricity. Borns became more and more controlling over the years, and she said he forced her to end contact with her family during the last 8 years of their marriage. Everything was wrong with everybody else, she said. He would never admit anything was wrong with him. Shupin said she left him in 2007 when he punched her in the face in front of her grandson. Lee, the black woman, moved to New Mexico and opened a donut shop called Baker's Dozen because she couldn't afford law school, her brother said. She worked 10-hour days 6 days a week, attending a Catholic church in the area, Byerly said. She was still recovering from her divorce when Borns, who was 22 years older than Lee, walked into the donut shop, saw a picture of Lee on the wall and asked to meet her, Byerly said. He was a ranch hand and charming to Arie, Byerly said. She told me he used to be a successful builder and was going to go back to that. Borns, who never married Lee, convinced Lee to sell her business, Byerly said. Byerly feels he met her at a vulnerable time. She was concerned about Lee selling the business, as well as the age difference between the two. Bad signs. Lee sold the donut shop in 2008 and used her money to buy a semi-truck so she and Borns could make deliveries around the country under the name Ladybug Trucking, Byerly said. Lee did the business operations as they drove across the country, never staying in one place very long. She turned herself inside out to do stuff for him, and he just kept getting more and more weird, she said. They stayed on the road after their first son, Augustine, known as Gus, was born, but Lee eventually wanted to settle down with the kids. Byerly said that, in one of the few times Borns listened to her, he agreed to build the cabin in the Montana wilderness. Arie was happy for a while, and the kids were so sweet and loved their mom and dad, Byerly said. But, on the visits they had with the family, Byerly did not like the way Borns controlled Lee. A couple of incidents she heard about stand out. Borns ticked Lee out of their truck on the side of the freeway while she was 8 months pregnant, leaving her to walk to a payphone to call Flieger and ask for help. Flieger was going to buy her a plane ticket, but Lee changed her mind after talking to Borns. Borns refused to take Lee to the hospital when she was giving birth to young Arie. Byerly said he wouldn't remove the snow from their driveway even though he owned a plow, leaving Lee to have the baby in the bathtub. Lee did not see a doctor for at least 2 weeks after giving birth, Flieger said. Borns was emotionally abusive to Lee, Byerly said. I do believe that Arie was going to leave him, she said. Borns held anti-government views, but Byerly said he wasn't off the deep end about it. The friend called 911 and told officers that Borns said his wife had been mocking and writing him all day, according to Anaconda Deer Lodge Police Chief Tim Barkle. Police believe Borns first shut his wife in the kitchen and his young daughter in her crib before he walked outside and shut the 2 other children about 20 feet from the cabin. Borns carried his sons inside and laid them on a bed, then placed his young daughter's body in between the brothers as their mother lay deleted next to the kitchen table. He set fire to a chair or sofa, then laid down next to the children's bodies and shot himself in the head with a .45. All 5 unalived of single gunshot wounds to the head. The divester pretty much ignored every red flag. The old age, the terrible background, the fact he wasn't able to hold a job, and followed him all the way to the middle of nowhere to raise her mixed-race family. I think she ignored all of it because she was happy she got mixed-race children. What's with divesters and old white men? How is an unemployed old white man a viable option to raise a family? The divester was that desperate although she was living in a really white state? While all of this was happening, she kept letting that crusty old man take her to Pound Town every chance he got. It makes me think that the divester was always waiting for a white man to approach her, and she took the first one she could get because the chances of it happening again were slim. To be honest with you, I believe white men operate in the grand scheme of things. Notice how they keep erasing the divester's existence. During slavery and Jim Crow, white men never claimed black women's mixed-race children because they didn't want to muddy the bloodline. Ask Eartha Kitt. Put it this way, we know everyone watches corn, but when you point it out to them, they become ashamed. I believe that's how most white men view black women. The black woman in this story was just a pawn who learned the hard way. Divesting gone up in flames.